I live in Southern California, and the time this incident occurred was in the summer and I was 16. I was supposed to ride the train down to the beach with a so-called friend, but he ended up going earlier and leaving me behind, and just told me to meet him at the beach. So I walked to the train station and hopped on by myself. I remember how frustrated I felt because my friend left without me, and I didn't want to be alone because I've had people harass me before, and it scared me. I finally get to the beach and messaged him asking where he's at, and he told me where he was, so I walked to where he was supposed to be, but he wasn't there. I remember calling and texting him, trying to figure out where the hell he was, but he wouldn't pick up. Over an hour later, he responded saying he was with a bunch of people, even though it was supposed to just be me and him. But he told me he was at a surf shop, and then he would be back at the spot soon. I eventually just started walking around aimlessly, trying to find him, but I had no luck. I got lost and was just walking in circles at that point. I just remember how hurt I was because I came all this way to hang out with him, but he was being a huge flake. I started crying at this point, just hoping that he would answer my texts and calls, because another hour had gone by already, and it was so hot out, which also sucked. He finally texted me back, and I asked where he was, and he told me that his dad picked him up. I was like, what the F? I then told him off because what he did was fucked up. He started apologizing, but I didn't believe him because he's been a flake before. I walked back to the train station because I just wanted to go home and forget this day ever happened. But as I'm walking, a man drove by whistling at me and started catcalling me, but I tried to ignore it and walked faster. But I see him park his car around the block and heard and saw him behind me. He kept shouting at me, and he was getting closer and closer. I could feel him almost try to grab me, but a security guard saw and could see how terrified I was, and she stopped him. At this point, I tried to call another friend, trying to tell them what's happening in case the situation gets worse. My friend told me to get out of there and told me to run. So I hung up and started sprinting to the station and kept looking behind me, but the man was nowhere to be found. I finally got there just in time for the train to come. When I got inside the train, I started bawling my eyes out. I was so scared and hurt by everything that happened that day. I kept asking myself, why would he go out of his way to park his car around the corner and follow me? I told the friend who I was supposed to hang out that day with what happened, and he felt even worse about leaving me alone and ditching me. To start off this story, I'll explain a little context before jumping right in. I was an 18-year-old female, had tattoos, a little curvy, weighing in at 157. The story takes place at Pensacola Beach. I was there visiting my mother and vacationing a bit, and against my better judgment, I thought I was safe and strong enough to stand up to anyone and confident in myself in going hiking alone on the beach by myself, since my boyfriend at the time didn't want to go with me, nor did my mother. Now that you have enough of the context, let's begin. I had my mother's boyfriend drop me off by Fort Pickens, which is roughly 10 miles from Pensacola Beach, and I plan on hiking along the beach side all the way back to the main beach. So fast forward to making it back, there's thousands of people everywhere. It's summer, and all the tourist attractions were booming with loud music. I decided it was time to go home, and so I called for a taxi, and they said it would take around 40 minutes. And with that, I went and sat on the stone stage, since it was over 115 degrees out and very humid. I was only wearing a crop top, tank top, and bikini bottoms since I got my shorts soaked. The very moment I was alone on my phone, I had this man come up to me and ask, in broken English, if I was okay. Now, I didn't mind it much, because with being a pale ginger, the moment I got hot, my whole face turns red, and it looks pretty rough, and I figured he was just worried about me. But when I saw his face, he was a Hispanic man, probably in his 30s, with a teardrop tattoo below his eye. And sadly, I've studied this tattoo because of its meaning, and if you don't already know, it's usually not a good sign to have that tattoo. It means they've either had a fallen brother in prison or gang related. I answered respectfully to him and explained to him that I was fine, and with that, he muttered something and walked off. Unsettled, I moved my location and texted my mother that I was waiting for my taxi and would be home soon. I called my mother, now a little alarmed, and that he deliberately found me again, asking her for her advice and telling her about what's going on. By then, another 20 to 30 minutes later, getting frustrated that the taxi hadn't arrived, I get a text from the company explaining it might be another hour. Annoyed and wanting to just go home, I called my mother back, and as we're talking, the man comes back, asking if I'm okay, and then proceeding to ask me if I need a ride home, explaining that no, the taxi is coming, and that yes, I was fine. He walked off again, and I'm telling my mom that I was getting uncomfortable by this, and that I want her to stay on the phone with me just in case. And mind you, there's people everywhere, so I had a false sense of safety. Lo and behold, another 20 minutes he came back, extremely nervous and uncomfortable, came right up to me, asking me if I'd like a ride home. And once again, I explained I was fine and waiting for a taxi. He begins walking across the road, yelling that he could be my taxi. And of course his car is right there in the first parking spot in front of me. On the phone with my mom, this man is still yelling from his car to get in his car and that he'd be my taxi. I remember panicking and looking around for someone to help me, anyone who could come in between me and this man. But sadly, humanity has failed me. Everyone walked past me like nothing was happening. Older men, older women, teenage boys, teenage girls. Everyone walked past me without asking if I needed help or if this man was bothering me. Nothing. He stayed by his car, proceeding to yell at me to get in, and he'd be my taxi. By this time, my taxi is 2 hours late. I called for another one, and someone texted me saying they'd be there in 10 to 20 minutes, so I decided to wait out the man trying to get me in his car. While still on the phone, I pretended to be talking to the taxi company saying, "Oh, you'll be here any minute? Alright, thank you." After hearing this, the man got in his car and left. Still startled, I sighed a sigh of relief and sat down, trying to breathe. I told my mom I'd call her in a little bit and that I needed to breathe. With that, I hung up trying to keep my composure, but still not understanding why he was trying so hard to get me in his car. The taxi arrived, I got in, and while driving home I explained what happened and thanked him continuously for actually coming to get me, and how I was forgotten for 2 whole hours. He apologized and said the other drivers for this company were assholes and don't drive out this far. And when he saw that I had been waiting for 2 hours before it would delete itself in the system, he clicked and got to me. Was this man planning on kidnapping me? Assaulting me? I have so many unanswered questions on what his plan was for me. Was he actually going to take me home? Or was I going to get put into sex trafficking to never be seen again? To that man that had the teardrop tattoo, let's never meet again. This happened during the holidays of 2011 and 2012. I just turned 18 the previous spring, and my mom, sisters, and I were traveling from Canada to visit family friends and spend Christmas and New Year's soaking up the sun and relaxing on the incredibly gorgeous 7 Mile beach. During the day, I spent a lot of time with my family doing excursions, swimming with dolphins, snorkeling, paragliding, and enjoying the hot sun, a far cry from the brutal winter we escaped from. At night, I was mostly left to myself to find my own fun. My sisters were underage, and so they couldn't go out drinking with me. I spent a lot of time wandering around the beach, going for late night walks, and trying to meet other kids my age. It actually worked out pretty well, and I met some cool people. I hung out with a brother and sister from Toronto. I met a 30-year-old woman who had stumbled away from her work party and thought I was much older than I was. As an 18-year-old, I had sort of this fake confidence where I'd outwardly presented myself as someone who seemed like they knew exactly what they wanted, excellent at talking to girls, brave, and even cocky. But inside, I definitely couldn't back that up. I was shy and nervous and really had to force myself to talk to strangers. It was tough, but a bit of liquid courage made my conversations flow far more naturally. Though the constant anxiety, especially when it came to girls, never really went away, I just pretended it wasn't there. One night, I stumbled across a group of Americans, Jess, Amber, Alyssa, and her boyfriend Caleb, as well as a local guy named Ernest, smoking some weed on the beach. They were all around 20 years old, and they invited me to join them. We spent a few hours getting to know each other and telling stupid stories. I had a bottle of rum. They had weed. So for a group of dumb kids, it was a match made in heaven. It was getting late, so we all made plans to meet up the next night and do some bar hopping. The next night came, and I met them at their resort. We go to this bar that Ernest suggests. It was a sports bar with beer pong tables, pool, and other games like Buck Hunter and pinball. It was attached to a nightclub that had a Dubstep Friday event that we planned to hit up after a few drinks. We started drinking at the sports bar, and I met all kinds of interesting people, including a girl from my hometown who went to school just down the street from my house. It was really a blast. I can't remember having more fun at a bar in my entire life. Usually when you go out to a bar, you hang out with your friends and maybe meet the odd person here and there, but this was different. It was refreshing getting to meet so many people from all over the place. After getting demolished by a couple in their 60s at beer pong, we began mingling with another group of kids our age, and there was this one girl, I'll call her Amanda, who basically became attached to my hip upon us meeting, and extremely touchy towards me. I uncomfortably played it off. I didn't want to be rude, but I wasn't interested in her advances. Not only was she not giving me my personal space, but I just simply wasn't attracted to her. I kind of had the hots for the aforementioned Amber, and I wasn't about to let this girl get in the way of that. I was a bit short with her, but still friendly enough not to upset her, and some of the other people in her group were pretty cool, so I let it slide. Our group of 6 had basically doubled in size, and so it was at this time we all decided to go to the nightclub. We get to the bar top and start ordering drinks, and trying to be the cool guy that I thought I was, I order a round for the whole group. Everyone was pretty pumped and I felt good. I passed Amanda her drink and she squeezed my butt and gave me a wink. I basically ignored it and downed my drink with the rest of the group. A good 20 minutes pass. I'm having a good time dancing, drinking, and chatting with the Americans I met the previous day, when Amanda stumbles over to me and starts touching me again. "Hey cutie, how about you come dance with me?" she says. No thanks, I'm good." "I feel so messed up," she responds. "Come on, it'll be fun." "I'm really alright. I'm gonna hang out with these guys." She looks dejected, and then she does a total 180 on me that completely catches me off guard. "You know, I'm pretty messed up. Did you put something in my drink?" What are you talking about?" I reply. "You definitely put something in my drink, didn't you? I only had a few and I feel so fucked up." "That's ridiculous," I proclaimed. "Why would I ever want to do something like that?" "No, you definitely put something in my drink, and I'm gonna tell everyone here you're trying to drug me." I was totally stunned. I didn't even know what to say. I know stuff like this happens to people, and you should especially be careful around strangers, but I most certainly did not put anything in her drink. At first I was a bit concerned. Maybe someone else did. The fact that she was using this to threaten me convinced me otherwise. "I swear, I didn't put anything in your drink. He didn't put anything in your drink," Amber chimed in. "I hardly even know this guy, but I can tell you he didn't put anything in your drink." "How do you know that?" Amanda responded. "Maybe he put something in your drink, too." I feel fine. Do you all feel fine? She asked her group to a resounding yes. Leave us alone and find someone else to harass. Amanda smiled and winked at me and walked away. That was the weirdest shit I've ever seen, said Amber. Stick with us. We got your back if she comes around again. I spent the rest of the night incredibly anxious with my head on a swivel. She was there with her friends, and I would occasionally catch her staring daggers at me, scowling. It made it really hard to enjoy the rest of the evening. As the bar was closing, I went outside to smoke a cigarette and wait for the others when Amanda came up to me again. Hey, I'm sorry for accusing you of putting something in my drink. Do you want to come down to the beach with me? We can get some alone time and I can give you a proper apology. Alarm bells went off in my head. What the hell was this girl trying to do? She accused me of drugging her and now she's asking me to be alone with her? Was this some sadistic way of flirting with me? Absolutely not, I say in the most stern voice possible. This is insane. Please leave me alone. I don't even let her respond. I throw down my half-finished cigarette and ran back into the bar to find the others and tell them what happened. They're near the exit of the bar with the people from her group, and I ask her friends what her deal was, telling them about what had just happened. Turns out she wasn't their friend. They had met her that night at the sports bar before we showed up. One of the guys said that she was acting inappropriately towards him as well, and when he told her he wasn't interested, she became really weird and kept asking him to be alone with her. When we left the bar, she was nowhere to be found, and I didn't see her again for the rest of the trip. I have no idea what her motive or end goal was. Part of me feels like she was just a weird girl who was trying to flirt, and was completely terrible at it. But there's another part of me that feels like she had other motives that might have been more sinister. I don't know if it was a coincidence or not, but Ernest also disappeared after that, and I never saw him again, so maybe they were colluding to rob people. If so, it wasn't very well planned. Either way, it was pretty creepy, and I'm thankful I didn't run into her again. This is a true story that happened to me back in 2006 when I was living in Hobbs Sound Beach, Florida, a rather small town in between some bigger beach towns. I had just driven back home to Oklahoma to visit and happened to talk one of my best friends, Joe, into moving back to Florida with me. One night, Joe and I had decided we were going to head down to the beach, bring a couple of beers and some herb, and chill out down by the beach. It was a nice night. As we pulled up, I remember parking my car in the beachside parking lot. We were listening to Sublime and opening our first beers when I told Joe I was going to walk down the beach. I kicked off my sandals and walked down to the ocean. The ocean was flat, waves barely rolling up against my ankles. As I'm standing there gazing at the open ocean, I heard Joe say something as he started walking down from the car towards me on the beach. Then, what I can only describe as an ethereal blue lane of light illuminates me. The light creates a lane about 15 feet wide. The light illuminated the sand from the ocean to the top of the beach's sand dune. What struck me as odd was that it wasn't a broadcast light in a V shape from the origin. It was a parallel line of light. It was illuminating the granulons of sand in a way I'd never seen light do before. As it lit me up, I exclaimed to Joe, "What the fuck is that?" I began to search for the origin of the light. I didn't see nor hear anything in the sky above, so I focused my attention on the ocean. I could somehow sense that this light was coming from near the offshore. I squinted to look for any stern lights, assuming maybe this was coming from a boat. This was a clear night, and in a clearer night off the Florida coast, you could see a boat's lights for miles off the coast into the horizon. I saw nothing. No boats, no shadow outlines along the horizon, nothing. Still, I could sense that this light illuminating me was coming from a few hundred yards off the beach, albeit still unable to physically see the object. This analysis all happened within a matter of probably 20 to 30 seconds as the light illuminated me. The light then slowly dissipated off of me. It then lit up Joe's lane for about 10 seconds, who had now descended the top of the beach and was almost closing in on me. Now he's freaking out. Then the light dissipates off him and illuminated the lane on the other side of me, where there was nothing. The light then behaved in a way I will never forget. It did a rapid shuffle of the 3 lanes in a random fashion. It's like it straight up fucking scanned us. The next thing I know, a huge tidal wave is picking me up off the beach. The wave had to have been at least 20 foot tall. It picked me up off the ground and threw me face first onto the beach like a rag doll. If you've ever skateboarded, I'm sure you've heard the term scorpioned, where you eat shit face first and your legs wrap over your head from behind you. Worst case scenario kind of ordeal. That's what happened, but not so gnarly. As I got up, I yelled for Joe. I heard him. He had been washed about 30 yards inland. I walked up to him and said, "Dude, are you okay? What the hell was that?" He said in a quiver, "I don't know, man." Just then, I felt this really creepy, spooky sixth sense feeling come over me, like we'd seen a ghost. He felt it too. It was written all over our faces. I said, "Let's get out of here right now." We jumped back into my car and hauled ass back to the house. As we're sitting on the couch in the living room, trying to recount what had just happened on the couch, we must have been talking very loud. My cousin, who'd been in bed sleeping, comes out and says, "Guys, it's 4:30 in the effing morning. What are you guys out here yelling about?" Simultaneously, we both start blurting out what had to seem like an absolute insane retelling of what had just happened. He didn't believe us, of course. He asked us if we had taken hard drugs or were drunk. We weren't. We'd only both had 1 beer each. Then as he goes back to his room to go sleep, I looked over to my friend Joe and said, "Wait, 4:30? We went out there at like 11, and have only been gone an hour." We both looked at each other with a frightened, spooked look. I've told myself many things over the years to try and make sense of it. Government helicopters, submarines, tidal wave warning systems. But deep in my gut, I know that Joe and I will never forget, and coincidentally also never fully remember, the time we were possibly abducted by an unidentified submerged object. I was 20 years old back then, just a pup. I recuperated fast, but the older I got, closer to my 30s, the worse and worse my back showed I wasn't alright. That the tidal wave that scorpioned me up onto the beach really had messed me up. I have to use a back roller and a back massager daily to do physical rehab on myself from what feels like 3 to 4 completely blown vertebrae. It's literally a daily reminder that whatever happened out there on that beach that night in Florida really did happen.